Hey, grade twos, welcome back to The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. I'm going to read to you chapters 55, 56, and 57 with permission from Little Brown and Company. Chapter 55 is called The Lodgers. Firelight spilled out from the nest and into the cold, blustery night. Roz sat inside and listened to the wind and to the soft pops and crackles of burning wood. And then the robot's keen hearing picked up another sound, tiny footsteps crunching through the snow. Roz, I'm freezing. Can I join you by the fire, please? Said a weak voice. Into the light crawled Chit-Chat. The squirrel was shivering and clumps of ice stuck to her fur. When she finally felt the heat of the fire, she collapsed. Roz picked her up off the floor, gently placed her on a warm stone, and let her sleep. An hour later, there were more footsteps, and a family of hares shuffled into the nest. They huddled together in a corner without saying a word. Pinktail, the opossum, was the next to arrive. Good evening, she mumbled, trying to act cheerful. It certainly has been chilly. Swooper the owl hobbled in, followed by some chickadees and a magpie. Fink knew it was a good thing when he saw it, and the fox lay down right by the fire. Then came Dig Down the groundhog. The fuzzy bandits carried an old turtle named Crag, who was in the worst shape of all. Creatures who should have been hibernating deep underground had been roused by that vicious weather. One of the healthiest animals with the warmest homes was safe. More and more weary animals appeared and slowly filled up the lodge. This was the first time many of the lodgers had seen fire, and they gazed at it with a mixture of fear and hope. They could feel the fire's destructive power, but they could also feel its healing power as it warmed their bones. The lodgers seemed to push forward, eager to feel more warmth, and then pull back, afraid of feeling too much. It was important that the lodgers understood fire, so Roz showed them how to build one. She showed the smaller animals how to arrange the kindling, and she showed the bigger animals how to arrange the logs. Bumpkin, Lumpkin, and Rumpkin struck the firestones together, and everyone cheered when they finally managed a spark. As Roz looked around, she saw moles curling up beside an owl, a mouse snuggling between two weasels, hares nestling against a badger. Never before had the robot seen prey and predators so close and peaceful. But how long could the peace possibly last? I propose a truce, said Roz, like the Dawn Truce. Everyone must agree not to hunt or harm one another while in my lodge. Very well, said Swooper after consulting his carnivorous friends. We hunters will control ourselves. Then it's settled, said Roz. My home is a safe place for all. One by one, the lodgers each fell into a deep sleep. Even the nocturnal creatures, usually wide awake at that hour, gave in to the coziness of the nest. The robot stood out of the way and quietly tended to the fire as her guests slept through the night. Only when daylight was streaming in through the door did the lodgers finally begin to stir. You are all welcome to stay here as long as you like, said the robot as the animals rubbed sleep from their eyes. My home is your home. Thanks a lot, Roz. Fink carefully stepped over a hare and a woodpecker on his way to the door. I don't think I would have survived another night on my own. It's too bad we can't cram a few more creatures in here. And the fox slipped outside. The robot looked down at the fur and feathers that now carpeted the floor. The nest had been completely full that night. If any more animals showed up, they'd have been left out in the cold. But Roz was not about to let that happen. Chapter 56, The New Lodges. The second lodge would have to be bigger than the first if it was going to fit Broadfoot the bull moose. He was a towering hulk of an animal and had a thick coat of fur, but even he was struggling with the frigid temperatures. Broadfoot lived on the other side of the pond in a dense section of the forest that was home to many animals, most of whom were in desperate need of a good thaw. The winter days were short, so there was no time to waste, and rather than walking all the way around the pond, Roz tested its frozen surface to see if it was safe to cross. She threw a heavy rock high in the air and watched it bounce off the hard ice. Then she carefully walked over the ice and into the forest on the other side, where she found Broadfoot waiting for her. The moose quietly led the robot to the clearing in the trees where the new lodge would go. Then Roz made a fire and watched as cold creatures began crawling out from the shadows. "Do not worry," the robot said to the growing crowd, steam puffing from their noses. "You will all be warm soon, but I need your help." Roz asked the animals to collect anything useful they could find: large stones, strong branches, chunks of frozen mud. With the robot's building expertise and the small army of helpers, construction of the second lodge didn't take long. The animals happily agreed to the robot's truce, and then they shuffled into the warm wooden dome. "If you keep the fire alive, it will keep you alive," explained Roz as she dropped another log onto the flames. "But be careful. Fire can turn deadly in an instant." At dawn, heavy snow was falling again, and there was Roz setting out from the nest to build a third lodge. She trudged into the great meadow where fierce winds had created enormous sweeping snowdrifts. But she powered through and finished the job, and was soon beginning to work on a fourth lodge, and then a fifth. The island became dotted with lodges that all glowed warmly through those long winter nights. And inside each one, animals laughed and shared stories and cheered their good friend Roz. Chapter 57, The Fire. Strange sounds were echoing from the far side of the pond. What started as a low murmur gradually swelled to a chorus of terrified voices. There was an eerie glow in that part of the forest, and a thick plume of smoke began rising from the snowy treetops. Roz charged across the ice and found the second lodge was completely engulfed by a raging fire. Frightened animals were running in every direction, fleeing for their lives through the deep snow. "What happened?" shouted Roz as Broadfoot galloped wildly past. "We put too many logs in the fire pit," he said without stopping. "The flames climbed up to the ceiling." "My baby is still in there," cried a mother hare, pointing at the burning lodge. "Somebody help, please." Roz didn't hesitate. She plowed through the snow and ducked into the lodge. Flames and snow were everywhere. A tall stack of logs blazed in the fire pit, and in the far corner, a tiny ball of fur was shaking with fear. Crouching low, the robot wound her way beneath the smoke and around the flames and gently scooped up the young hare. "Do not worry," Roz yelled over the roar of the fire. "You are going to be okay." She turned to leave, but the doorway had started to crumble. So she shielded the hare with her body and smashed right through the walls of the lodge. Sizzling pieces of wood went flying as the robot and the hare burst outside into the soft snow. "Oh, darling, you're all right," cried the mother hare, pulling her daughter close. "Thank you for saving my baby, Roz." Now that everyone was safely away, the robot turned her attention to putting out the fire. Her glowing eyes darted across as she computed a plan. Then, with all the strength in her legs, Roz launched herself high up into the snowy branches of the nearest pine tree. A moment later, the tree was shaking violently and heaps of snow were sliding from its branches and pouring onto the heavy flames like an avalanche. Steam hissed up through the smothering mound of snow. The flames quickly died, the snow quickly melted, and within minutes, all that remained was a charred foundation of the lodge. Roz dropped down from the tree and waited as the frightened animals slowly returned. Then she said to them, "Would you like another lodge?" The animals looked at one another, unsure of what to do. Understandably, they were afraid of another fire breaking out, but they were far more afraid of the deadly cold. So they pulled together and worked with Roz and built a bigger, better lodge on top of the old one. It had a taller ceiling and a deeper fire pit. It was made with more rock and less wood. It had a supply of water for emergencies. But the most important safety feature of this rebuilt lodge were the lodgers themselves. who now had a whole new respect for fire. And that's chapters 55, 56, and 57. See you soon for the next round. Oh, that didn't stop.